Hey, my name is Felicia. Today I want to discuss why I decided to become a psychotherapist. I don't have that one concise answer. Even right now, I'm thinking, Feli, why did you choose to become a psychotherapist? And I think there was just so many different unique points in my life where I realized that this is something that maybe in my circles, people don't speak much about. Now, I'm so thankful that we live in a day and age where there's a lot more emphasis on mental health, mental well-being, and awareness of what mental health looks like. But I think where I was in the church and growing up in the church, there wasn't that kind of nuanced conversation about mental health. So what I found a lot, and I say growing up, I found this even quite recently as well, in the last couple of years. What I found a lot is that many issues, which are complex, incredibly complex, I found it very reductionistic, the way it was approached. It was okay, you're having an issue with X, right? This must be a spiritual, this must be just this. Now, what I grew to understand just through my own research and my own journey and just personal encounters I was having with others was that there is a plethora of things that affect us as holistic human beings. And I was really, really passionate about having that conversation and encouraging others to have that conversation as well. So just in that, I realized that there's a passion here. There's a passion for mental health. There's a passion for people to grow in understanding their own mental health and understanding psychoeducation. So it's really interesting because I've only started this journey now in 2021, but I remember seeing a journal entry from 2017 where I had made a note to myself become a therapist by this year, and I think the year was 2019, so obviously I didn't I didn't hit that milestone, I didn't hit that goal, but it just shows that this has been something that's been in the back of my mind for a very long time. And it wasn't this was something I knew as a teenager though. So I've already gone to university, I have a master's, I am in a 9-to-5 job, so a lot of my life, it almost seemed, was very kind of set out for me, and it almost felt a little bit late in the day to decide to do this massive career switch. And I suppose that was just the mentality I have. I don't think it's ever too late in the day to do something that, I feel I'm called to this. God is really developing a passion in my heart for a particular topic. I don't think it's ever too late to begin that journey. And what I've actually learned by being just on the course is that it calls from different walks of life. There's so many different degrees of people on my course, age-wise, career phase-wise, gender, it's just so unique and it's very eclectic as well. So I think that's really helped me kind of get over that mental barriers and maybe I'm starting just a little bit late in the day. Counselling within itself has to do with so much compassion, it has to do with so much empathy, and it's such a gift to the body of God. I see that it's so necessary for people to be able to really unpack the things that they've gone through, really unpack the pages of their story and give it language and give it context. Because to be fair, life can be incredibly hard. It's interesting because I suppose sometimes as Christians, we believe that we have to have this facade of perfection, of goodness, of righteousness. I began to realize that post my conversion, so I got saved at 19, post my conversion, all the traumas of my last 19 years didn't instantaneously disappear. There may have been a period where certain aspects of my life began to make sense in the grand scheme of God and understanding his goodness and understanding that he has always loved me. But what I began to understand whilst I grew continuously in age and in the Lord is the fact that, I have baggage. I have really got some stuff. And so the first encounter I ever personally had with therapy was at the age of, I don't even remember, I want to say 24. I'm so dramatic, 24. I want to say 24. And the way it manifested for me is I actually had a mental breakdown. I completely burnt out. So I had just graduated from university and I went straight into a career of training to become a pharmacist. I was working in a failing hospital. I had just moved out. There was just a lot of different transitions happening at once. At the time, I didn't know what it was called, but I was facing anxiety. And it was so intense that I just stopped functioning. Like it almost like, imagine like shaking. I don't know why the first thing that came to mind was like a bottle of supermalt, not even a bottle of Coke. Imagine shaking a bottle of supermalt to the point where it's so tense inside that there has to be some form of release. Otherwise this bottle's gonna break. Okay, I broke. I was the supermalt bottle that just broke. And I remember going to the doctor because I had to have time off of work. I couldn't function. And the doctor gave me two options. He was just like, you can either engage in talking therapy or you can take medicine. So my friend actually recommended a therapist and I went private. And I remember just talking to this woman, and I was so thankful because this was actually a Black Christian woman who was the therapist. I remember talking to this woman and feeling so seen. Like, I just remember thinking like, yo, all I'm doing is talking. So now I know that therapy is just a lot more than talking, because to train to become a therapist, there's so many different skills you have to learn. There's so many different like psychotherapeutic models you have to learn as well. Like there's science behind it, but at the time it just felt like I was talking to someone who was just listening to me. And all of a sudden I'm beginning to unpack and unload stuff I have been carrying for years, not really knowing how to unload it, not really knowing that there was language for it. So that was actually my first encounter with therapy. And I think from there I was definitely an advocate, because I think I was the first person in my family to ever get therapy. It was like I was like that first generation to do it. And I had noticed that not many people around me had it. Now that's very different now. Like I can say like nearly all my friends have had therapy. But I think that was like the first kind of like where the first seeds were planted, where I was just like, no, I really want to embark on this. Like, I think that this is something I'm definitely developing like this passion for. And just as the years went on, I would just encounter people who just have faced so many different things in life where they were just holding so much, and like they didn't even realize that like, yo, you actually have a lot of trauma. Like you have been hurt, you have been wounded, and you're allowed to process that. You're allowed to really unearth that. And why I think it's actually very important that Christians not only become therapists but embark on it is because I notice sometimes unknowingly within the church environment we can like promote this concept of like spiritual bypassing, where we're not really addressing issues from a holistic perspective, where it might be like, oh, is something physically wrong? Is it something emotionally, mentally? Is something spiritually wrong? Instead, it's just like spiritual. And another way we can do this is by also just denying what we're feeling and just putting a spiritual spin on it. So you might be feeling really hurt, really betrayed, you might be carrying trauma, but instead of like sitting with it, unearthing all those things, we may be popping like really cheap Christianese on top of it. And yeah, I genuinely believe God can heal and God can help, but sometimes it's not instantaneously, and it might take us sitting with some pretty hard stuff before we see any change or any movement. And so all these factors for myself were just almost like, if you just keep on adding something to a pot, it's like I'm just adding a penny to a pot every time I see this. And it was what was building up my desire to be like, no, this really has to be addressed because I'm tired of it. And I think it came to accumulation this year. So I am coming from a church environment, a church background, where there was actually church abuse. It was horrific. There was spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, sexual harassment, and there was also this concept that, whoa, like in church environments, that's where narcissistic leadership can really cause such a degree of trauma to congregants. And then that's when I started learning about things like religious trauma, etc. Now, at this point, I had already started studying, but it was almost like that sealed it for me. I was like, yeah, I know I'm called to this. And like, I always kind of knew I wanted to become a psychotherapist, but in the last couple of years, it has been confirmed over and over and over again that not only is this something I know the Lord has placed in my heart, but this is something that is so necessary, especially in church environments. The whole kind of like grouping of individuals who have been intensely hurt by the church. And it's like, how do you walk with someone through trauma and where it's really affecting how they see God. So those are all the things I'm super passionate about when I think about therapy, and it's the things that I definitely want to see shifted and changed in the environments that I'm in a lot as well. Another aspect is the sense that I don't see many therapists that look like me. I don't see many young Christian Black female therapists. It shows that there maybe is a gap in this space, and coming out of a pandemic, coronavirus is still here, but coming out of a pandemic where there's been such an effect on people's mental health, I definitely think there was like a call for diversity in the field. It's very deep, just by the nature of what you're studying. It's very deep, it's very soul searching. You have to do a lot of self-reflecting. To be a great therapist, you have to be very aware of yourself. You have to be very aware of emotions. Like, empathy is so necessary. But I just find it an incredibly compassionate career and an incredibly compassionate role as well. So I definitely think people can have misconceptions concerning faith and therapy. I think sometimes people I think thankfully we're no longer really in that space. But I could be wrong, it could just be the cycle that I'm in. I think some people may have loggerheads between accessing therapy or actually starting therapy and faith, because it may seem that by taking on therapy, it shows a lack of faith. I think some people might be a little bit turned off by the idea that a lot of psychotherapeutic models were created by secular psychologists. That might put people off. And I think, I don't know why, I know people say this example all the time, but like, we are so much more likely to go see a doctor because of our physical health, but just in the world in general, but definitely in Christian circles, whenever it comes to our mind, we literally think we can pray it away. Like, I'm gonna pray the depression away, I'm gonna pray the anxiety away. And I'm not saying prayer does not have a place. I definitely think it does. Like, scripture has so much to say about a downcast spirit. It has so much to say about anxiety. I'm just saying that God has also graced individuals with insight and knowledge about how we can actually address these things. Again, it goes back to, are we holistically approaching the human experience? So anxiety just doesn't affect the mind, it affects the body, the heart, the stomach. It affects so much more, you know? So I think sometimes people are afraid of therapy because, one, they may not have been taught about it. They may not really know what it is. They may not know what it looks like, and that's fair. If many people around you haven't had it, you don't have a good understanding of what it entails. But also, if there's a sense where the message from maybe people you really, really respect, whether that's parents, leaders, like mentors, if they have some form of kind of circumspection and caution concerning therapy, that might trickle down lower, and that might influence people's view on what therapy actually is. And I think there's just this fear like, oh, what if they're going to do something which is inherently like sinful, or what if I end up in something that I just don't want to end up in, you know? So, like, as humans, we fear what we don't know. And sometimes psychology can get a bad rep, but what I love about studying to become a therapist, especially I'm on a Christian course, I'm on a Christian counselling course. But what I love about the course I'm currently on is the fact that it takes an integrative approach to counselling. That means, as a Christian, you can stand back and you can literally pick the bits of psychodynamic theories that you think, well, and that many therapists do. The integrative approach isn't just for Christians. Like, many therapists may have an integrative approach, but they might be like, yeah, I'm gonna take some psychodynamic, I'm gonna take some person-centered because I think it works. But you are allowed to counsel with a biblical worldview, a biblical mindset. Now, with everything concerning ethics, a counsellor is not allowed to come and change your belief system. So if that's a fear you've had concerning therapy, I really hope that can just be squashed right now, because that's completely unethical. So they can't do that. But if you are curious, I would really say just do some research. Talk to some people who've gone through therapy. Talk to some people who are therapists, if you know any. Because I genuinely believe that therapy and your faith are not mutually exclusive. Like, I do not know where I would be without the wisdom and the compassion that's been imparted to me through therapists. Like, I don't know if I would ever have had the language for some of the things I had gone through without those individuals in my life. And I really want to break down that stigma or that kind of caution people have, where it's just like, therapy is for what non-Christians do, but as a Christian, I have the word, I have prayer, I have my community. Like, all these things are necessary, but I also believe God has graced us with this, like graced us with this gift, because counseling is a gift, and I definitely believe God has graced us with this gift as well. And I am really passionate and excited for people to experience that. So I think in this very long-winded way, these are the reasons why I have started this journey of becoming a psychotherapist.